Chapter 1. The East Wind. Cherry Tree Lane is a nice London street. On one side there are houses, on the other there is a park. The cherry trees go dancing right in the middle. Number 17 is the smallest house in the street. The Banks live in this house. They are 6, Mr. and Mrs. Banks, and their 4 children, Jane, Michael and the twins, Barbara and John. Mrs. Banks has a lot of housework, and she has a nurse to help her with the children. But one day, their nurse left them, and Mrs. Bank didn't know what to do. "Write to the newspaper," said Mr. Banks, "and the nurses will come. I'm sorry, but now I must go to work." He kissed his wife on her nose and went away to the city. The city was a place where Mr. Banks went every day. There he sat at a large desk and made money. He was very busy with it, and he brought some money home in his little black bag. Sometimes he gave some to Jane and Michael, but sometimes he didn't and said, "The bank is broken." When Mr. Banks went to work, Mrs. Banks began to write letters to the newspapers. Upstairs in the nursery, Jane and Michael were waiting for their father. It was a windy evening, and the east wind was blowing through the cherry trees. "Look, the trees are dancing," cried Jane. "That's Daddy over there," said Michael. "That's not Daddy," she said. "It's somebody else." It was a woman with her hat on and a bag in her right hand. Suddenly a strange thing happened. The wind lifted her up and brought her to the garden door. When the woman opened it, the wind lifted her up again and carried her at the front door. "Let's go and see who it is," said Jane. They left their room to have a look at a visitor. Jane and Michael could see that she was thin and had black hair and blue eyes. "They are very nice and very quiet children," said Mrs. Banks. But in fact, she didn't believe it. The nursery was upstairs, and the woman followed Mrs. Banks, but she slid up the banisters. Down, of course, the children often did it themselves. But up? Never. "Well, children," said Mrs. Banks, "this is your new nurse, Mary Poppins." Mary Poppins looked at them carefully. At last, the woman gave a long, loud sniff and said, "All right, I'll stay." When Mrs. Banks left the nursery, Jane and Michael came up to Mary Poppins. "How did you come?" Jane asked. "Did the wind blow you here?" "It did," said Mary Poppins, and no more, and she gave another sniff and opened her bag. "What a funny bag," Michael said. There was nothing inside, but the next moment, Mary Poppins took out a white apron, a large cake of soap, a toothbrush, a packet of hairpins, a bottle of perfume, and a small armchair. Jane and Michael were shocked. Then Mary Poppins took out a large bottle of medicine. "Is that your medicine?" asked Michael. "No, it's yours," said Mary Poppins. "I don't want it. I won't." But suddenly, Michael understood that he could not say no to her. He closed his eyes and opened his mouth. "Strawberry ice," he said. "More, more, more." But Mary Poppins, with her cold eyes, came up to Jane. Her spoon was full of something green and yellow. "Sweet lemon juice. I love it," Jane said. But when Mary Poppins came to the twins with the bottle, she cried, "Oh no, it's not good for them. Please." But Mary Poppins didn't look at her. She brought the spoon to John's mouth. He drank it, and Jane saw there was milk in the spoon. Then Mary Poppins opened her bag and took out 11 pajamas, a pair of boots, a set of dominoes, 2 bathing caps, and a book. Then came a bed. Jane and Michael were very surprised. Now they knew that something strange and wonderful happened at their house. "Mary Poppins," said Michael, "will you never leave us?" "Till the wind changes," she said, and went to bed. Chapter 2. The Day Out. "Every third Thursday," said Mrs. Banks. "The best people, madam," Mary Poppins said, "give every second Thursday, or—" "Very well," said Mrs. Banks quickly. So her day out began. Mary Poppins put on her white coat and white gloves and took her umbrella with a parrot's head for a handle under her arm. Mary Poppins liked to look her best, and she knew she always looked her best. She walked very quickly, but sometimes she stopped near a car or shop window to put her hat straight. She didn't forget about her dress and her umbrella, so she went to meet her friend, Bert. He was very good at drawing pavement pictures. It was a fine day, and there were some pictures, 2 bananas and an apple, and a head of Queen Elizabeth on the pavement. "Mary!" Bert cried happily. "It's my day out, Bert," she said. "I know, Mary," he said, "but—" and he looked sadly into his cap. "There was little money in it. Business is bad today. I'm sorry, I can't take you to tea today." Mary Poppins thought of the lemon cakes. What a pity! But when she saw Bert's face and said, "That's all right, Bert. I really don't want any tea today." And it was nice of Mary Poppins because she liked lemon cakes very much. Bert understood everything, but he said nothing. He took her hand in his and said, "Look, there is a new picture." They could see big trees, green grass, and blue sea in it. "Mary," he said, "I've got an idea. Let's go there, into the picture." And he got Mary out of the street, into the picture. There they were, inside it. How green it was there, and how quiet. What soft grass under their feet. There were green leaves near their hats, and little colored flowers near their shoes. Mary Poppins looked at Bert. Now he had a bright green and red coat, and white trousers and a new yellow hat. "Bert, you look fine!" she cried. Bert could not say anything. He was looking at her with round eyes. She took a little mirror out of her bag and looked into it. Round her shoulders there was a watery blue dress. On her head there was a beautiful blue hat. She was wearing shoes with diamonds like a princess. So they went and came to a little table. And there on a green table was afternoon tea. There were hundreds of lemon cakes on it. "Sit down, madam," asked a tall man in a black coat. Mary Poppins and Bert sat down on little green chairs. "I'm the waiter," said the man in the black coat. "Oh, but I didn't see you in the picture," said Mary Poppins. "Ah, I was behind the tree," said the waiter. So they began their afternoon tea. They drank a lot of tea and finished all the cakes. "There is nothing to pay," said the waiter. "Can you see a merry-go-round?" And he showed them the way between trees. "That's funny," said she. "I didn't see it in the picture." They came up to the merry-go-round. Mary Poppins and Bert jumped on 2 horses. When the music started, the horses left their places. What a surprise! Mary Poppins and Bert had a nice ride that day. When they came back, it was nearly dark. "I'm very sorry," the waiter said, "but we close at 7. May I show you the way out?" "It's a wonderful picture, Bert," said Mary Poppins. "Well, I did my best, Mary," said Bert, and they saw a large white door. It was made of thick chalk lines. "Here you are," the waiter said. "This is the way out." "Goodbye and thank you," said Mary Poppins. Then they went through the white door. When they went out, the lovely dress and the diamonds from her shoes and her beautiful hat disappeared. So did Bert's bright clothes. When she came back to number 17, Jane and Michael asked her, "Where have you been?" "In Fairyland," said Mary Poppins. "Did you see Cinderella?" said Jane. "Cinderella? Not me, no," said Mary Poppins. "Or Robinson Crusoe?" asked Michael. "Robinson Crusoe, no," said Mary Poppins. "Then you have not been to our Fairyland." Mary Poppins gave her greatest sniff. "Don't you know," she said, "that everybody's got a fairyland of their own?" Chapter 3. Laughing Gas. That nice afternoon, Mary Poppins took Jane and Michael to her uncle, Mr. Wigg. It was a long way to number 3 Robertson Road. But when Mary Poppins rang the bell, the door flew open and a thin lady came out. "How do you do, Mrs. Wigg?" said Jane. "Mrs. Wigg," said the thin lady. "No, thank you. I'm Miss Persimmon and am proud of it." Jane and Michael looked at each other. They thought that Mr. Wigg was a very special person if the lady was so glad not to be Mrs. Wigg. Jane and Michael followed Mary Poppins upstairs. "Come in, and welcome," called a loud voice from inside. Mary Poppins opened the door and they came into a nice large room. There was a fireplace in the corner, and in the middle of the room there was a big table with 4 cups, bread and butter, biscuits, chocolates, and a large cherry cake. "Nice to see you," somebody said. Jane and Michael looked around but saw nobody. "Oh, Uncle Albert, not again. It's not your birthday, is it?" Mary Poppins said, and looked up. Jane and Michael looked up too, and saw a round, fat man in the air. Indeed, he was sitting on the air and reading a newspaper. "My dear," said Mr. Wigg, smiling down at them, "I'm very sorry, but it is my birthday," he said, looking down at Jane and Michael. "I can see you're a little surprised," said Mr. Wigg, and indeed their mouths were so wide open. "You see, I'm a happy sort of man. I can smile and laugh at everything," said Mr. Wigg. "But why?" said Jane. "But how?" said Michael. "Well, when my birthday comes on Friday and I laugh on that day, I become filled with laughing gas. I can't keep on the ground. The first funny idea, and I'm up like a balloon," Mr. Wigg said. "And now here it is Friday again and my birthday, and you are visiting me. Oh, don't make me laugh, please." Mr. Wigg began to laugh loudly. He looked so funny, like a big balloon in the air, that Jane and Michael started laughing too. They laughed, and they laughed. They tried to stop, but couldn't. Then a funny thing happened to Jane. She felt herself growing lighter and lighter, getting filled with the air. It was a curious and nice feeling. And suddenly, she jumped up in the air. "Oh, this laughing gas is catching," said Mr. Wigg. The next moment, Michael flew up on Mr. Wigg's knee. "Nice to meet you," said Mr. Wigg to Michael. "It is kind of you to come up to me, because I can't come down to you." And then he and Michael looked at each other and started to laugh again. "Well, Mary," said Albert to Mary Poppins, "what about you, my dear?" Mary Poppins, come up," said Michael and Jane. "Think of something funny." "Ah, she can come up if she wants to," said Mr. Wigg, "even without laughing." "Well," said Mary Poppins, "it's all very silly, but you're all up there and you can't get down, so—" Then she put her hands down at her sides, and without a laugh, without even a smile, she flew up through the air. "Now we're all comfortable, and we can have tea," Mr. Wigg said, But the table's down there and we're up here. What shall we do? We're here and it's there. It's a terrible tragedy. But oh, it's terribly comic." And he hid his face in his hands and laughed loudly. Jane and Michael joined him. Finally, Mr. Wig dried his eyes. "Well," he said, "we must think of something sad, very sad. And then we shall get down. Well, I had an Aunt Emily. She was run over by a bus. Sad, very sad, terribly sad. Poor Aunt Emily. But her umbrella was okay. That was funny, wasn't it?" And he started laughing. "Mary, can't you do something?" "We want our tea," he said finally. The next moment the table began to jump on its legs. Suddenly, with all the cups and plates, it flew up and stopped next to them. "Good girl," said Mr. Wig. "It is my birthday, so we will begin with the cake." Then they heard a quick knock at the door. The door opened, and there stood Miss Persimmon. "I thought, Mr. Wig," she began, looking around the room. "You want some more hot water?" "Well, I never." She saw them sitting on the air round the table. "Mr. Wig, I know you are a little special, but to have tea in the air, for a gentleman of your age—" "But perhaps you will, Miss Persimmon," said Michael. "Will what?" said Miss Persimmon. "Catch the laughing gas as we did," said Michael. "I hope, young man," she said. "I'll stay on my feet, oh dear. What is the matter? I can't walk. I'm going, oh, help, help!" Miss Persimmon flew up and came to the table with the jug of hot water. Then she turned and went down again. "I must see a doctor. I must see a doctor," she said again and ran away from the room. "It is time to go home," Mary Poppins said seriously. Suddenly Jane and Michael and Mr. Wig came down. That thought was the first sad thought of the afternoon. "What a pity," Mr. Wig said. "It's very sad that you must go home." They came back home by bus. Jane and Michael were very quiet all the way. Then Michael said to Mary Poppins, "How often does your uncle get like that?" "Like what?" said Mary Poppins sharply. "Laughing and going up in the air." "Up in the air?" Mary Poppins' voice was angry. "What an idea! He is not a balloon." "But he did," said Michael. "We saw him." "What? My uncle is a gentleman." Michael and Jane said nothing. "Is it true or isn't it?" About Mr. Wig. Is Mary Poppins right or are we? They thought. Chapter 4. Miss Lark's Andrew. Miss Lark lived in the biggest house in Cherry Tree Lane. All day they could hear her loud voice. "Andrew, where are you?" Or, "Andrew, put on your coat." Or, "Andrew, come to Mother." Was Andrew a boy? No, he was a dog. A nice small dog called Andrew. Some people said that he looked like a toy dog. But he was a dog. Andrew lived like a prince. He slept in his bed. He had milk and chocolate for every meal. Andrew could do what he wanted. His days looked like our birthdays. And when Andrew had his birthday, he had 2 candles on his cake for every year, not 1. But Andrew wasn't happy. People laughed when they saw Andrew in his best coat or nice boots. "Oh no," said Michael. "He looks so stupid. And he is stupid too." "He is not stupid," said Mary Poppins. And Mary Poppins was right. Andrew wasn't stupid at all. You can think that he didn't love Miss Lark, but he did. She always was so kind to him. But he didn't like his life. He would like to have a nice piece of red meat. He wanted to be a usual dog. and he wanted to have usual dogs as his friends. Sometimes he ran out of his garden. He wanted to speak to a dog. One day, Andrew had a new friend. It was more than a usual dog. It was a terrible dog. All people were happy that he was not their dog. Miss Lark didn't like Andrew's friend. When she saw that Andrew was talking to his friend, she called, "Andrew, come home, my dear. Don't talk to this dog." But one day Jane and Michael saw Andrew all alone in the park. He was running very fast and looked very serious. "Hi, Andrew, where's your coat?" cried Michael. But Andrew just looked at them both and then turned to Mary Poppins. "Yap, yap," said Andrew very quickly. "Second house on the left," said Mary Poppins. "Yap," said Andrew. "No, no garden." Andrew barked again. "I'm not sure," said Mary Poppins. "He usually goes home at tea time." And Andrew ran away. "What was he saying?" Jane and Michael asked together. "Nothing special," said Mary Poppins, and closed her mouth. "I think he asked you where somebody lived," Michael began. "Well, why are you asking me then?" said Mary Poppins, sniffing. "I'm not a dictionary." "Oh, Michael," said Jane. "Mary Poppins, tell us what Andrew said to you, please." But she did not say. When they were near their house, they heard Miss Lark's loud cries. She ran and ran about the garden. She looked under and up every tree. "Oh, Andrew, where are you?" she cried again and again. Then she saw him. Andrew was coming to her, and near him was walking a big brown dog. "Oh, you are okay," said Miss Lark. "But that terrible dog! Shoo, shoo, go home." But the dog didn't go. "Go away, go home," said Miss Lark. "And you, Andrew, come in the house. You mustn't go for a walk without me and without your coat." Andrew barked but did not go. "What's the matter? Come in," said Miss Lark. Andrew barked again. "He says," said Mary Poppins, "that he's not coming in." Miss Lark looked at her in surprise. "How do you know what my dog says?" "Of course he will come in." Andrew barked again. "He won't," said Mary Poppins. "He will go home only with his friend." "No," said Miss Lark angrily. "That terrible street dog will never come into my garden." Andrew barked 3 or 4 times. "And he will go away." "Oh, Andrew, you can't." Miss Lark was crying. Andrew barked, and the 2 dogs got up. "Oh, he is going away." Miss Lark was going to cry. "Very well, Andrew, this dog can stay, but he will sleep in the garden." "He says, madam, that his friend must sleep in the room." "Or he will go and sleep in the garden with his friend," said Mary Poppins. Andrew got up and was ready to go. "Oh, Andrew," cried Miss Lark. "Very well, he will sleep in the room." Andrew barked again. Andrew barked to his friend, "Come on," and they went into the house. "He isn't stupid, you see," said Jane. "No," said Michael. "But how can Mary Poppins—" "I don't know," said Jane, "and she'll never, never tell us." Chapter 5. The Dancing Cow. Jane was in bed. She was very ill. "Shall I sit at the window and tell you what is happening outside?" "Yes, please," said Jane. So Michael came up to the window and cried, "Wow!" "What is it?" said Jane. "A very strange thing. There's a cow," said Michael. "A cow? In the middle of a town? How funny!" "Mary Poppins," said Jane. "There's a cow in the lane." "Yes, and it's walking very slowly and looking around. I think it has lost something." Mary Poppins came up to the window. "It's not funny at all," she said. "I know that cow. She was my mother's great friend. The red cow lived in the field of beautiful yellow flowers. She had a happy life in her sunny and green world. In the morning and in the afternoon, she gave lessons to the red calf, her daughter. Then they had supper, and the red cow showed the red calf how to tell good grass from bad grass. When her daughter went to sleep, she went into a corner of the field and thought her own happy thoughts. The red cow liked her life, and she didn't want any change. But one night, she came to the end of her happy days. That night, the red cow got up suddenly and began to dance. There was no music, but she danced and danced and danced. "What a strange thing," said the red cow. "I don't like dancing, but now I am dancing, and I like it." At last she got tired and decided to stop. But to her great surprise, she could not stop dancing. She went dancing all the night. In the morning, she couldn't have breakfast because she couldn't stop. In the afternoon and in the evening, she danced too. When the second night came, and she still could not stop, she got very worried, and at the end of a week dancing, she was very, very, very worried. "I must go and see the king," she said. She danced out of the field and went to the king. All the people and animals looked at the dancing cow with a great surprise, but nobody was more surprised than the red cow herself. At last she came to the palace where the king lived. When the palace door opened, she danced through the halls to the king's throne. The king was very busy. He was making new laws. His secretary was writing them down in a little red notebook. "How many laws?" asked the king. 72, Your Majesty," the secretary said. "Well, not bad for an hour's work," said the king. He stood up and saw the red cow. She was dancing to the throne. "What is that?" the king asked. "A cow, Your Majesty," she answered. "I can see that, but what do you want? Be quick, because I am a very busy king, and stop dancing," the king said in an angry voice. "That's my problem, Your Majesty. I can't stop," said the red cow. The red cow tried to stop dancing, but it was no good. "I can't. It is the 7th day of dancing, and I can't eat. I can't sleep." Very strange," said the king. "What does it feel like?" "Funny," said the red cow. "It's a happy feeling, too." "Very funny," said the king, and looked at the cow very carefully. Suddenly he jumped on his feet and cried, "Don't you see that? The cow has caught a fallen star on her horn. Now pull it off, and this lady can stop dancing and have some breakfast." But the star didn't come off. Then the king took the biggest book, but it said nothing about cows with stars on their horns, except the story of the cow who jumped over the moon. "Try that too," the king said. "Try what?" said the red cow. "Try to jump over the moon. I think it will help." "Me?" The red cow was very surprised. "I am a serious animal. Jumping is not good for a lady." "Madam," the king said, "do you want to go on dancing? Do you like to feel hungry and sleepy?" The red cow thought of the sweet yellow flowers and soft grass, and she said, "I'll try it." And they went to the garden. "Now," said the king, 1, 2, 3. That moment, the red cow jumped and flew up into the sky. She looked down. The king was growing smaller and smaller, She went higher and higher through the dark sky. The stars were dancing around her like great golden plates. Then she closed her eyes because the moonlight was very bright and cold. Suddenly the star fell off with a great noise. Next moment the red cow came down on the earth again. To her great surprise, she was in her green field, and she stopped dancing. The red cow and her daughter had a lovely dinner of soft grass and sweet yellow flowers, and she began to live her usual life. At first, she enjoyed it very much. She was glad to eat her breakfast without dancing. She lay down in the grass and slept peacefully at night. But one night she began to feel uncomfortable. She wanted something else, but she couldn't understand what it was. At last, she understood it. It was the star. She thought only about the star. She lost her appetite. One day, she went to my mother and told her the story. "My dear," my mother said to her, "you know millions of stars fall out of the sky every night, but they fall in different places." "So I'll go and look for one," the red cow began, and a happy look came into her eyes. Mary Poppins paused. "And now she is walking down Cherry Tree Lane," Jane said. "Yes," said Michael. "She is looking for her star." Chapter 6, Bad Tuesday. That morning, Michael got up with a funny feeling. Something was wrong with him. "What day is it today, Mary Poppins?" he asked. "Tuesday," said Mary Poppins. "Go and take a shower." He didn't. The funny feeling got stronger. "I won't," he said slowly. "I won't." All day nothing went right with him. He did the most terrible things, and he felt very pleased and glad. "You are ill," said Mrs. Banks. "You will have some medicine." "I'm not ill," said Michael. "I don't want to be good." Suddenly Mary Poppins said to him, "You got out of bed the wrong side this morning." "I didn't," said Michael. "There is no wrong side to my bed." "Every bed has a right and a wrong side," said Mary Poppins. "Not mine. It's next to the wall." "Both sides were wrong this morning. Now, sir," said Mary Poppins, "let's go for a walk." When they were in the park, Michael saw a compass on the ground. "What is it, Michael?" Jane asked. "I won't tell you," said Michael. "Mary Poppins, what is it for?" asked Jane. Mary Poppins took the little box from Michael's hand. "To go round the world with," said Mary Poppins. "What an idea," said Michael. "It is not a ship. This little box can't take you round the world." Mary Poppins sniffed, turned the compass and said the word, "North." Suddenly it got very cold, and the wind was very strong. All around them there was a lot of ice and snow. "Oh!" cried Jane. "Where are we now? Where is the park?" The next moment a polar bear jumped out. He was standing on his legs. "Welcome to the North Pole. You are very cold, aren't you?" the bear asked in a kind voice. "That's because you need something to eat. What would you like? Fish?" "I'm afraid we can't stay. We're on our way round the world. South," Mary Poppins said to the compass. The next moment the air got soft and warm. The children were in a noisy green jungle. "Welcome," said a large parrot. "Can you help me, Mary Poppins?" "My wife's out and I'm so tired sitting on the eggs." "Well, stay here and I can get some sleep." "Do, Mary Poppins, and I'll get you some bananas." "I'm sorry, but we are on our way round the world," said Mary Poppins. Jane and Michael wanted to try some tropical fruit, but Mary Poppins said, "East." Again the world went round and round. or they went round and round the world. Now they were among bamboos. A big black animal with white spots was sleeping on the ground. It was a panda in its own home and not in a zoo. The panda opened one black eye. "Oh, it's you, my dear girl," he said sleepily. "Well, I'll make a home for you all in a moment." "We are not going to stay," Mary Poppins said. "We're taking a little trip round the world." Isn't it strange? Going round the world when you could stay here with me. My dear children, tickle me behind the ears. That always sends me to sleep. In a moment he was sleeping peacefully, and Mary Poppins said in a low voice, "West." Hills and lakes, mountains and forests went round and round. This time they were on long white seashore, and before them there was a large black and gray dolphin with her baby. "Mary Poppins, you're just in time for an evening swim. What are you doing here?" "Oh, Amelia, we are just going round the world, Mary Poppins." "Well, now for a meal. What would you like?" Amelia smiled at Jane and Michael, showing her white teeth. "Thank you, Amelia, but we must be at home in a moment," said Mary Poppins. "What kind of visit is that? Next time you must stay for tea, and we'll all sit together on a rock and sing a song to the moon." Amelia got very sad. "That will be lovely," said Jane and Michael. "Well, bye-bye then." "Bye, Amelia," Michael and Jane cried. "What are you doing, Michael?" The boy heard Mary Poppins's cold voice. The sea was not there. There was green grass and Jane and the twins and Mary Poppins walking in the park. "Round the world and back in a minute. What a wonderful box," said Jane. "It's a compass, and it's mine," said Michael. "Give it to me." "My compass," said Mary Poppins, and put it into her bag. He looked at her very angrily. The strange feeling inside him grew worse, and in the evening he grew very naughty. He kicked the twins and pulled Jane's hair. "And that," said Mary Poppins, "is the end." Michael was naughty and hated everybody. He got into bed without cleaning his teeth. Suddenly he saw the compass on the table and had an idea. "I'll take the compass and go round the world, and they will never see me again?" He got up, took the compass in his hand. "North, south, east, west," he said very quickly. He heard a noise and saw 4 large animals: the polar bear, the parrot, the panda, and the dolphin. They were coming to him, not kind and friendly, but angry and terrible. "Oh, Mary Poppins, help me!" Michael cried and shut his eyes. Suddenly the animals stopped and then disappeared. "Mary Poppins!" he cried again. "I can hear you okay," he heard Mary Poppins' voice. He opened one eye. No angry animals. Then he sat up and looked round the room. There was nothing there. He was in his bed, and there was no strange feeling inside. He felt quiet and happy. "What happened?" he asked Mary Poppins. "I told you that it was my compass. Don't take my things, please," she said. Then she took the compass, put it in her pocket, and went out of his bedroom. She came back in some minutes with a cup of hot milk in her hands. Michael was drinking the milk very slowly. How comfortable his bed was! How warm it was! How happy he was to be at home! Chapter 7. The Bird Woman. "Maybe she won't be there," said Michael. "Yes, she will," said Jane. "She's always there." Mary Poppins and the children were on the way to the Bird Woman. Mary Poppins walked between Jane and Michael. She had a new hat on and looked into every shop window. Was the hat okay? Didn't the pink roses turn into daisies? At last they came to St. Paul's Cathedral. It was built a long time ago by a man with a bird's name, Sir Christopher Wren. That was why so many birds and the bird woman lived near Sir Christopher Wren's cathedral. "There she is!" cried Michael suddenly. "She's saying it! She's saying it!" cried Jane. And she was saying it. "Feed the birds, tuppence a bag. Feed the birds, tuppence a bag. Feed the birds, tuppence a bag." She said it again and again in a high singing voice. In her hands, the bird woman had a lot of little bags full of breadcrumbs. She was selling them.